Captain Jake Harrison relaxed in his command chair, tapping his three-fingered hand rhythmically on the smooth surface of his desk. On the holographic screen in front of him, Earth, a small blue-green planet, slowly turned in the dark void of space. It was so utterly unremarkable. "Computer, replay the mission briefing," he ordered, his voice carrying the distinctive nasal tone of his species. The artificial intelligence responded without delay. "Mission designation, Evaluation Protocol 7729B. Target solar system, third planet, designation Earth. Dominant species, Terrans. Technology level, pre-interstellar. Mission objective, determine suitability for the Galactic Consortium's observation program." Jake let out a sharp snort, sounding like air escaping from a deflating balloon. "Another single planet assessment? Really scraping the bottom of the barrel now, aren't they?" His second-in-command, Lieutenant Olivia Brooks, briefly looked up from her console. Her skin shimmered with a vibrant purple bioluminescence, a sign of amusement for her species. "What did you expect, Captain? The Consortium's got to catalog everything, even the less evolved ones," she said, her mouth twisting into a grin that was more a curious expression than a smile. "And hey, it's been almost 20 standard cycles since we last had to assess a single-planet species." Jake rolled all four of his eyes at once, the movement a little unsettling. 20 glorious cycles, free from explaining to primitives why the sky changes color during our atmospheric testing. A wave of laughter spread through the bridge, the sound a blend of clicks, whistles, and rumbling tones from various species aboard the ship. "You know what they call single-planet species back at the Academy?" Ethan Ramirez, the navigation officer, chimed in, his antennae twitching with excitement for the punchline. "Cosmic homebodies." Laughter bubbled up again, and Captain Jake Harrison couldn't help but join in. It was an old joke, but it still hit the mark. In a galaxy where even the least advanced consortium members maintained colonies across at least 3 planets, species confined to their homeworlds were treated as curiosities, undeveloped, primitive. Like watching infant civilizations take their first clumsy steps. "Put the planet's data up on the main screen," Jake ordered after the laughter faded. The large display in front of the bridge flickered to life, revealing Earth's vital statistics. "Let's see what we're dealing with," he said, watching as the information scrolled past. Atmospheric composition, surface geography, biodiversity estimates, technological development timelines. Nothing particularly noteworthy. "They've barely managed to send probes beyond their own system," Commander Soren Gray observed with a sneer. "And they've only managed to establish a single orbital habitat, not even a proper colony on their moon. Classic example of an evolutionary bottleneck." "Exactly," Mirabelle added, her voice sharp. "They're too busy fighting each other to look up at the stars." Jake stared at the rotating image of Earth. "What's their official consortium development stage?" he asked, his tone casual but curious. "Type 3, pre-expansion phase," Kaller responded, his eyes scanning his pad. "They've mastered atomic energy, but gravity manipulation and faster-than-light travel are beyond them. They're still burning chemical fuels just to escape their atmosphere." "Burning chemicals?" Ethan snickered. "Next, you'll tell me they're still using wheels." "Actually," Kaller said, scrolling through the data, "they are." A burst of laughter rippled through the crew again, louder this time. Jake let it continue for a moment before raising a hand for silence. "All right, enough. We all know the drill. Standard evaluation protocol. Observe their civilization for 1 local solar cycle, analyze their trajectory, and compile a report for the consortium's expansion committee. No contact, no interference, just another boring assignment. But let's keep it professional as usual." He stood from his chair, his tall, slender frame unfolding as he did. "Lieutenant Olivia Brooks, activate the stealth systems. Commander Gray, prepare the atmospheric probes. Ethan Ramirez, set a course for high orbit around the planet. Let's get this over with so we can return to more exciting missions." As the crew carried out their tasks, Jake continued to gaze at the blue planet on the screen. Just another single-planet species evaluation, nothing special. He was certain this assignment wouldn't change his views on the cosmic order of things. How wrong he was about to be. The consortium vessel Boundless Horizons slid into Earth's solar system, moving with the quiet elegance of advanced technology, their quantum drive powered down with barely a ripple in the fabric of space-time, positioning them just beyond Mars' orbit. "Primitive detection system successfully bypassed," Lieutenant Olivia Brooks reported, her fingers dancing across the holographic controls. Their satellites and ground-based telescopes won't pick up anything beyond a minor gravitational disturbance, nothing that would raise any alarms. Captain Jake Harrison gave a distracted nod, his attention still focused on the view screen. The small blue-green world hung against the backdrop of space, its lonely moon barely visible. How had a species managed to survive with only one natural satellite? Most civilized worlds had at least 3 moons, essential for stabilizing tides and providing resources. Starting comprehensive scan sequence, Commander Soren Gray's voice came from the science station. The tall reptilian officer tapped a few commands into his console with an air of practiced disinterest. Standard protocol, atmospheric composition, biodiversity survey, tectonic stability, and technological emissions mapping. Jake settled back into his chair, giving his crew time to work. How long until we get a preliminary report? About 6 local hours, Keller answered. Their atmosphere contains an unusually high level of reactive gases, which is disrupting some of our more detailed scans. Reactive gases? Jake raised an eyebrow. Pollution from their industrial phase, I suppose? Partly, Keller agreed, glancing at his readings. But there's also a surprisingly high concentration of oxygen, 21%. That's unusually high for a terrestrial world. Ethan Ramirez spun in his chair. Must be a fire hazard. One lightning strike, and boom! He mimed an explosion with his 4 hands. That's a bit counterintuitive from an evolutionary standpoint, Mirabelle noted, her eyes narrowing as she analyzed her data. Most species terraform their planets to reduce oxygen levels once they can. It's safer that way. Jake waved dismissively, his focus still on the planet. A dismissive wave of his hand, Jake muttered, "They probably haven't figured that out yet. Mark it down as another developmental deficit." The bridge crew continued their work, occasionally making observations that further emphasized Earth's perceived inadequacies. "They've split their communication systems into thousands of incompatible networks," one officer remarked. "Look at their population centers, all packed along coastlines and rivers. No effort at all for uniform distribution." Another added, "Their orbital vehicles are practically held together with adhesives and sheer willpower." Each new discovery was met with snickers or outright laughter, even from Nex, who usually prided himself on professional detachment. But this time, even he couldn't resist joining in. It was all too easy. "Captain, you need to see this," called Keller, his voice tinged with confusion after hours of scanning. Jake strode over to the science station, curious. "What is it?" "Biodiversity readings," Keller said, pointing at a scrolling display of numbers. "They're off the charts. The computer initially flagged it as a sensor malfunction." Jake frowned. "Recalibrate and run it again." "I've already done so 3 times, Keller replied, his scaled fingers tapping nervously on the edge of the console. "According to our scans, they have over 8 million distinct species on their planet." A heavy silence fell over the bridge. "That's impossible," Mirabelle finally said, moving to peer over Keller's shoulder. "The most biodiverse world in the consortium is Lannis Prime, with just under 2 million species, and they've been terraforming and importing life forms for millennia." "Nevertheless," Keller insisted, "the readings are consistent. 8 million species, possibly more. We can't even catalog them all with our current sensor array." Jake's facial ridges furrowed deeply. "How is that possible on a single planet?" Keller hesitated before responding. "I don't know, Captain. It defies established ecological models." "Well, they're probably just simple organisms," Ethan Ramirez interjected, his confidence unwavering. "Microbes and such. Nothing complex or interesting." Keller pressed several controls and the main screen flickered to life with visual representations of the data. "We're detecting vertebrate species alone in the hundreds of thousands, flying creatures, aquatic life, land animals of incredible variety." He brought up a series of images, schools of fish in countless shapes and colors, birds with striking plumage, mammals ranging from tiny rodents to massive ocean-dwelling behemoths. "They're oceans," Mirabelle whispered, studying the data closely. "The biodiversity in their oceans alone exceeds the combined aquatic life of 12 consortium worlds." Jake stared at the data, his professional skepticism battling with the evidence before him. "This requires closer observation," he decided, his voice tight. "Prepare atmospheric probes. I want detailed analysis of every major ecosystem on the planet." As the crew hurried to carry out their orders, Jake Harrison returned to his command chair. His earlier mockery was forgotten. For the first time in decades of exploration, something unexpected stirred within him: curiosity. Unexpected discoveries, you've got to be kidding me, Lieutenant Olivia Brooks muttered, her bioluminescent skin flickering with disbelief as she studied the holographic display. These readings can't possibly be correct. In the past 24 hours, the Boundless Horizon had deployed 12 atmospheric probes, each designed to analyze a different region of Earth. The data streaming back had completely thrown the research team into disarray, challenging everything they thought they knew about planetary development. Captain Jake Harrison stood in the heart of the ship's main laboratory, surrounded by 3D projections of Earth's ecosystems. His 4 eyes darted between displays, trying to process the incomprehensible data. "Commander Kaller," he called, his voice unusually subdued. "Explain this." Kaller cleared his throat nervously and gestured broadly at the chaos of information surrounding them. "Well, Captain, it appears that Earth possesses 21 distinct biomes, each with its own characteristic assemblage of plants and animals adapted to those specific conditions." 21? Jake repeated, his brow furrowing. "The consortium average is 4 per planet. Even terraformed worlds rarely exceed 7. "Yes, sir," Kaller replied. "And within those biomes, the variation is extraordinary." He manipulated the controls to bring up side-by-side comparisons. For example, they have regions of extreme cold at their poles, with temperatures dropping to -50 degrees Celsius. Yet less than 10,000 kilometers away, they have tropical rainforests where temperatures soar to 40 degrees Celsius. Ethan Ramirez, who had joined them in the lab, whistled through his breathing spiracles. "No wonder they haven't expanded to other planets. This one's like having several worlds smashed together." Jake shot him a silencing glance, but privately acknowledged the truth in the young officer's observation. He turned back to Kaller. "Continue." "Their hydrological cycle is unlike anything in our records," Kaller continued, bringing up new visuals. "Most planets with surface water have relatively uniform precipitation patterns. Earth, however, has regions that receive virtually no rainfall for decades, while others, just over a mountain range, are drenched daily." "In their oceans," Mirabel interjected, having been reviewing marine data, "we've identified at least 5 distinct vertical ecosystems, each with its own food chain, predator-prey relationships, and evolutionary adaptations." Kaller nodded enthusiastically. "And that brings me to their geological features. Preliminary scans showed standard plate tectonics, but further analysis reveals a system of exceptional complexity. They have underwater mountain ranges stretching thousands of kilometers, trenches deeper than anything we've recorded on other planets, active volcanic systems, and glacial formations." Jake stepped closer to a display showing a cross-section of Earth's crust. "Is the planet unstable?" "Quite the opposite," Kaller replied, his scientific curiosity now overriding any cultural bias. "The system appears to be in a remarkable state of dynamic equilibrium. The constant geological activity helps regulate the planetary temperature, drives ocean currents, and even contributes to the composition of their atmosphere." "Speaking of atmosphere," Mirabel added, bringing up another display, "their weather systems defy conventional modeling. We've recorded hurricane-force winds, electrical storms of incredible intensity, and precipitation ranging from water droplets to frozen crystals, sometimes in the same region. On the same day, impossible," Jake muttered, but there was no conviction in his voice. The evidence before him was irrefutable. "Yet," Kaller said, his tone now tinged with reluctant admiration, "life flourishes in every environment, from the simplest microorganisms thriving in volcanic vents to complex mammals surviving in deserts. Even in their frozen regions, life endures." The lab fell quiet as the team of alien researchers absorbed the scope of the findings. Finally, it was Ethan Ramirez who broke the silence, his earlier sarcasm replaced by genuine awe. "Captain, do you understand the magnitude of this? Most species in the consortium need to colonize multiple planets because each world offers only limited ecological variation. But these Terrans," he shook his head in disbelief, "they evolved on a planet that's practically a microcosm of a galaxy, with ecosystems stacked on top of one another." Jake nodded, slowly grasping the scale of what he was hearing. "No wonder they haven't expanded, they haven't had to." "There's more," Kaller added, quietly triggering a new display. "While reviewing historical temperature data from ice core samples, we stumbled upon something extraordinary. This planet has endured at least 5 major extinction events in its history." "5 catastrophic die-offs?" Mirabel echoed, her bioluminescence pulsing with disbelief. And yet, Keller continued, not only did biodiversity recover after each event, but it increased. The silence that followed was heavy with realization. The adaptive capacity here surpasses anything we've documented, Keller concluded, his voice carrying both wonder and disbelief. Captain Jake Harrison slowly paced around the lab, his eyes darting from one display to the next, his earlier dismissive attitude gone. It was replaced by something rarely seen from him, humility. "What about the Terrans themselves?" he asked, his voice quieter now, tinged with curiosity. "How do they fit into this astonishing world?" Keller brought up data on Terran physiology and distribution. "They're fascinating in their ordinariness, Captain. Mid-range omnivores, moderately adaptable, not particularly specialized for any specific environment. And yet they've established populations in nearly every biome, from equatorial deserts to frigid tundras." Mirabelle scrolled through settlement maps. They build different dwellings, eat different foods, adapt to different cultural practices, but physiologically they remain the same species. And they've done this without significant genetic alteration, just cultural innovation and basic tools. Jake stared at an image of Earth from orbit, his perspective shifting. "This isn't a primitive world inhabited by a stagnant species. This is a planet of unimaginable diversity, one where the inhabitants have never needed to look beyond their borders." "Prepare the deep scan probes," Jake commanded suddenly. "I want a comprehensive analysis of their population centers, their technology, and how they utilize resources." Mirabelle looked puzzled. "That goes beyond the standard protocol for pre-expansion species." "This isn't a standard evaluation anymore, Lieutenant," Jake replied softly, his voice steady. "We're not dealing with just another single-planet species. We're witnessing something unprecedented." As the officers scrambled to follow orders, Captain Jake Harrison's gaze remained locked on the slowly rotating image of Earth, a world that had shattered all his preconceptions about planetary development and evolutionary potential, and he hadn't even begun to scratch the surface. "Stealth protocols are engaged, Captain. We are effectively undetectable by their systems," Lieutenant Olivia Brooks reported as Boundless Horizon descended through Earth's upper atmosphere. The colossal ship, over 3 kilometers in length, moved with unnatural silence, its advanced technology bending light and absorbing radar to blend seamlessly with the environment. Jake Harrison stood at the forward observation dome, his 4 eyes widening with genuine astonishment. They were cruising at 10,000 meters above what the Terrans referred to as New York City. The sprawling urban landscape stretched below them like a living organism, a web of lights and structures that pulsed with life and activity. "It's so chaotic," he murmured in awe. Unlike the meticulously planned cities of Varn Dominion worlds with their perfect geometric patterns and uniformity, this Terran metropolis, it looks like it grew spontaneously, like an urban coral reef. "In an inefficient design," Ethan Ramirez remarked, though his tone lacked the mockery he had earlier. "But there's something visually captivating about it." Commander Keller approached, holding a data pad in his hand. "Captain, I've completed the preliminary analysis of 7 major population centers. The diversity, well, it's unprecedented." "Explain," Jake ordered, his eyes still fixed on the city below. "Their architectural styles vary drastically depending on local climates, available resources, historical influences, and cultural factors," Kalor explained, displaying side-by-side holograms. "Even within this single city, there are buildings constructed from at least 12 different materials. Some are clearly designed for aesthetics, not just practicality." "How wasteful," Mirabelle muttered, but her bioluminescence betrayed more fascination than judgment. "Is it, though?" Keller countered, his voice tinged with curiosity. "I've been running simulations on efficiency. Their design creates resilience through redundancy. When one system fails, others step in to compensate." As the ship glided over the city, its sensors recorded everything, from traffic patterns to the distribution of energy and resources. Jake Harrison observed a transport vessel, a cruise ship by Terran standards, maneuvering through the harbor below. The contrast between this slow-moving watercraft and their own interstellar vessel was almost comical. "And what's the population of this urban center?" Jake asked, still trying to absorb the scale of it all. "Approximately 8 million Terrans within the core area," Keller responded. "Another 12 million live in the surrounding settlements, so 20 million beings living in a single city." Jake shook his head, trying to comprehend the sheer magnitude. "And how many such cities do they have?" Nearly 500 urban centers with populations exceeding 1 million, Keller replied, each with its own distinct characteristics, economies, and cultural identities. Jake exhaled, incredulous. The complexity is staggering. Captain, Mirabelle called from her station. You requested alerts for signs of adaptation to environmental challenges. You should see this. The main view screen activated, displaying satellite imagery of a massive storm system barreling across the ocean. Meteorological data scrolled alongside the visuals. They call it a hurricane, Mirabelle explained. Wind speeds exceeding 200 kilometers per h, torrential rainfall, storm surge flooding. This one's heading toward a densely populated coastal region. Are they evacuating? Jake asked, expecting chaos. Some are, Mirabelle replied, but most are staying. They've reinforced structures, established emergency protocols, and positioned response teams. They're not fleeing the disaster, they're preparing to endure it. Ethan Ramirez leaned forward, his antennae twitching with interest. They've adapted to frequent natural disasters. Not just adapted, Kalor interjected, scanning historical data. They've integrated them into their culture and daily life. Their infrastructure planning, their building codes, their social systems, Mirabelle observed. This region experiences these storms regularly, yet they continue to thrive here. The ship veered off course, picking up speed as it moved toward the storm system. Within moments, they hovered just above the hurricane's outer bands, observing as the coastal city below prepared for the impact. Most Varn Dominion species would have abandoned this region or altered the weather to prevent such storms, Jake remarked. Why did Terrans choose to remain here? Resources, Mirabelle suggested. The coastal areas offer fishing, trade routes, and transportation advantages. That doesn't cover everything, Kalor countered. They've constructed an entire cultural framework centered around resilience and recovery. Listen to this. Kalor activated an audio feed from local Terran broadcasts. The bridge filled with the voices of Terran reporters detailing preparation strategies, warning systems, and community shelters. There was a tone of concern, but also an unsettling calm, tempered with quiet confidence. They've been through this before, Jake realized, his tone softening. And they know it'll happen again, and that they'll rebuild if necessary, Kalor added. Historical records show that these settlements have been destroyed multiple times by storms, earthquakes, and floods, only to be rebuilt, often bigger and more robust. Magnificent stubbornness, Jake muttered, now looking at the data with something akin to respect. The ship continued its global survey, moving from continent to continent, studying Terran settlements in environments that ranged from searing deserts to freezing tundras. The same pattern appeared everywhere: adaptation, resilience, and remarkable diversity. In the arid regions of Africa, Kalor continued, we observed communities that survive with minimal water, thanks to ingenious conservation techniques. In the frigid north, there are settlements designed to withstand lethal cold and months of darkness. In flood-prone river deltas, homes are built on stilts, or designed to float when the waters rise. They don't just survive in these environments, Kalor noted after nearly 48 continuous hours of observation. They've built distinct cultures, cuisines, technologies, and social structures that are optimized for each unique setting. And then they share these innovations among themselves, Jake remarked, now fully engaged in understanding this fascinating species. Take their agricultural methods, Kalor said, pulling up comparative displays. In temperate areas, they practice intensive agriculture with annual crops. In arid regions, they've developed drought-resistant perennials. In tropical climates, they use multi-layered forest gardens, each technique specifically adapted to local conditions. And they trade these techniques? Mirabelle asked, still trying to process the enormity of it all. Constantly, Kalor replied. When one region comes up with an innovation, it spreads, not through centralized planning, like in the Varn Dominion, but through countless individual decisions and cultural exchanges. The view screen displayed a time-lapse showing agricultural innovations spreading across continents over the course of centuries. The pattern resembled adaptive evolution, except it was happening through culture, not genetics. This explains why they haven't pursued multiple planetary colonization, Ethan Ramirez said, a realization dawning. They're effectively running thousands of parallel adaptation experiments on a single world. Jake nodded slowly, deep understanding settling in. I spent my career looking down on single-planet species, assuming they were evolutionarily stunted. never once considering that some planets might be so ecologically diverse that expansion becomes unnecessary, or that some species might choose depth over breadth. Set a course for their polar regions, he ordered suddenly. I want to see how they've adapted to the most extreme environments on their own world before we move on. As Boundless Horizon accelerated toward Earth's southern ice cap, Jake felt something unfamiliar stir inside him: admiration. For the first time in his lengthy career exploring the galaxy, he felt genuine respect for a pre-expansion civilization. These Terrans, with their single planet and primitive technology, had managed to do something the mighty Varn Dominion, with all its worlds and technological wonders, had never even attempted, creating a civilization so adaptable and diverse that it didn't need to reach beyond its borders. Time for the big revelation, Captain Jake Harrison called an emergency briefing in the Boundless Horizon Central Conference Chamber. After 5 Terran days of intensive observation, the standard evaluation protocol had been completely abandoned. What had begun as a routine assessment was quickly becoming the most comprehensive planetary study in Varn Dominion history. The ship's senior officers filed in, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and exhilaration. None had rested properly since the discovery of Earth's extraordinary characteristics. How could they? Every hour brought new revelations that called into question the very foundations of galactic civilization. Status reports, Jake commanded once everyone was seated. He looked ragged, his uniform rumpled from lack of sleep, his exhaustion apparent. Lieutenant Olivia Brooks, begin, he ordered. Olivia Brooks activated the room's holographic display system. I've completed a comparative analysis between Earth and all 17 central Varn Dominion worlds, she said, her bioluminescence practically glowing with excitement. The results are revolutionary, sir. The display filled with charts comparing biodiversity metrics. Earth's column towered over all others. This can't be correct, protested Fleet Administrator Pax Mori, the highest-ranking Varn Dominion bureaucrat on board. His gelatinous form quivered in indignation. You're telling me that this single primitive world contains more biological diversity than 17 advanced worlds combined? Actually, 23, Olivia Brooks corrected, tapping the controls. I expanded the comparison to include our 6 most successful colony clusters. She manipulated the display, and more columns appeared, none reaching even half the height of Earth's. The numbers are irrefutable, Administrator. Earth contains more distinct species, more ecological niches, and more biological adaptation strategies than any known planetary system in the explored galaxy. Pax Mori's translucent skin flushed bright orange. Absurd. The Vega colonies alone have been importing and engineering new species for 12,000 years. Yes, Kaller interjected, but they've been doing so within narrowly defined parameters and controlled environments. Earth's biodiversity emerged naturally through evolutionary processes across radically different biomes. Which brings me to my report, Kaller continued, taking over the display. I've been analyzing their climate systems in comparison to terraformed worlds. He pulled up a new visualization showing temperature and precipitation patterns across dozens of planets. Earth's data was a riot of colors, Kaller continued, while the others showed much more uniform patterns. Most Varn Dominion species, for example, terraform their colony worlds to recreate the conditions of their home worlds. The Archon Rain maintained precisely 73% humidity on all 11 of their colonies. The Jinther Order keeps their 7 worlds at identical gravitational pull and day-night cycles. What's your point, Commander? Pax Mori asked, his voice dripping with impatience. My point, Administrator, Kaller replied with unexpected force, is that while we've been spreading outward across multiple worlds, these Terrans have been adapting to the incredible diversity of their single world. And in doing so, they've developed something we haven't. Ethan Ramirez leaned forward, his antennae quivering with realization. Adaptability, he said quietly. Precisely, Kaller agreed. Consider the Desert Empire. They control 32 worlds, but they can only survive in methane-rich atmospheres within a narrow temperature band. The Fian Collective has terraformed 18 planets to match their aquatic needs. Meanwhile, he gestured toward the data. Terrans live in environments ranging from oxygen-thin mountain plateaus to dense rainforests, from water-scarce deserts to perpetually flooded deltas. They survive in temperatures ranging from plus 50 degrees C to minus 40 degrees Celsius, and they've developed distinct but transferable technological and cultural adaptations for each environment, and they're all still recognizably Terran. Same species, same basic biology, added Kaller, his voice almost reverential. Incredible behavioral plasticity. Pax Mori's skin shifted to a pale yellow, the color of deep thought among his species. You're suggesting that we've been going about this all wrong for 30 millennia, Commander? I'm suggesting, Kaller said carefully, that we've been measuring advancement by the wrong metrics. We count colonized worlds and uniform control. Terrans measure success by the diversity of adaptation and resilience within a complex system. Captain Jake Harrison, who had been silent throughout the exchange, finally rose. Show them what we discovered in their information networks, he ordered. Kaller nodded and activated the final display. It revealed Terran art forms, thousands of distinct music styles, literature in hundreds of languages, philosophical systems, spiritual practices, and cuisine variations. Their cultural output exceeds that of the entire seventh quadrant, Kaller said quietly. Not because individual Terrans are more creative than other species, but because their environmental diversity drives cultural diversity. Different challenges produce different solutions, which produce different perspectives, and different perspectives create innovation. Their rate of technological advancement over the last century is nearly vertical, Mirabelle added, despite their limited resources. Administrator Pax Mori collapsed back into his chair, his gelatinous form visibly deflating. The Varn Dominion assessment protocols never accounted for this possibility, he admitted, his voice quieter now. We assumed technological advancement required multiplanetary expansion because that's been the path of every advanced species we've encountered. Until now, Jake Harrison said softly, his eyes steady as he looked at the stunned council. The room fell into silence as the weight of the implications began to sink in. It was Ethan Ramirez who finally spoke, his voice crackling with the energy of youthful realization, unbound by the old, established thinking. Don't you see what this means? He asked, his antennae vibrating with excitement. The Terrans haven't expanded to multiple planets, not because they can't, but because they haven't needed to. Their single world offers more diverse environments than our multiple colonies. While we've been terraforming to eliminate diversity, they've been evolving to handle it. Captain Jake Harrison nodded slowly. And if they ever do decide to expand beyond their world, they'll adapt to new planets far more readily than any Varn Dominion species. While our colonies require massive terraforming projects to recreate our homeworlds, Kaller concluded, Terrans could potentially adapt to foreign environments with minimal technological intervention. Administrator Pax Mori's skin shifted to a deep blue, the color of fundamental reassessment. This changes everything, he whispered. The evaluation protocol, the classification system, the Varn Dominion's entire approach to galactic development. Yes, Jake Harrison agreed, his voice calm but resolute. It does. He turned toward the view screen, showing Earth rotating peacefully below them, its blue oceans and swirling cloud patterns, concealing the extraordinary complexity they had discovered. We came here to evaluate a primitive, single-planet species, Jake said quietly, but instead, we found the most adaptable, resilient civilization in the known galaxy. And they've achieved it, not by conquering multiple worlds, but by embracing the incredible diversity of their one world. He looked back at his officers, his expression solemn. The question is no longer whether they're advanced enough to join the Varn Dominion. The question is whether the Varn Dominion is advanced enough to understand what they've accomplished. The Grand Council chamber of the Varn Dominion fell into stunned silence as Captain Jake Harrison concluded his presentation. The 72 representatives from various member species sat motionless, their varied anatomies, tentacles, appendages, sensory organs, and exoskeletons frozen in collective shock. Supreme Counselor Zoran Till, whose species had founded the Varn Dominion 30,000 years earlier, was the first to recover. His crystalline form refracted light in patterns, signaling deep thought. Captain Jake Harrison, he said, his voice resonating through the chamber. Are you seriously proposing that we reclassify Earth from a pre-expansion developing world to a Category 7 advanced civilization based solely on their achievements on a single planet? Jake stood tall before the most powerful gathering in known space, his demeanor respectful but resolute. I am, Supreme Counselor, and I believe the evidence supports this recommendation. A ripple of murmurs spread through the chamber. A Category 7 classification would place Earth among the 20 most advanced civilizations in the Varn Dominion, despite their lack of faster-than-light travel or off-world colonies. Preposterous! bellowed Counselor Vornak from the Cayley Syndicate. His massive form rose in objection. The classification system has always been clear. Technological advancement requires multiplanetary expansion. These Terrans haven't even established a proper colony on their own moon. With respect, Counselor, Captain Jake Harrison replied, that is precisely the point. Our classification system is based on a single developmental pathway that we assumed was universal. Earth demonstrates a valid alternative path. Lieutenant Olivia Brooks stepped forward, her bioluminescence carefully controlled to project confidence and professionalism. Counselors, she began, her voice steady, we've been assessing advancement by one lens, expansion and uniformity. But Earth's success shows that adaptability, resilience, and diversity should be the true metrics by which we measure a species' potential. The chamber buzzed with the weight of her words, as the council contemplated a shift in their long-held views about development and progress. If I may, Captain Jake Harrison began, his voice calm but carrying the weight of his observations, our comprehensive analysis reveals that Earth's environmental and biological diversity exceeds that of the combined Cayley Syndicate worlds by a factor of 17. Their cultural output in just the past century alone rivals that of the entire Seventh Quadrant. Commander Kaller activated a holographic display in the center of the chamber, and the data flickered to life. Our traditional metrics measure the breadth of expansion, Kaller explained, but they fail to capture the depth of adaptation. By evolving within their highly diverse world, instead of terraforming multiple planets to match a narrow comfort zone, Terrans have cultivated exceptional adaptability. And adaptability, Jake added, may well be the most valuable evolutionary trait in an ever-changing galaxy. Counselor Tylus Rar of the Zyphorian Collective raised a slender appendage. If what you're proposing is correct, Captain, these Terrans could potentially colonize worlds that would be completely inhospitable to the rest of us, without extensive terraforming? Precisely, Jake replied. Their baseline adaptability is remarkable. They regularly survive in conditions that would require emergency environmental suits for most Va'arn Dominion species. The chamber erupted into a chorus of overlapping discussions, arguments, and exclamations of disbelief. Supreme Counselor Zoran Till raised a crystalline limb, calling for silence. Captain Jake Harrison, he said, his voice resonating through the chamber once quiet had returned. You've spent your career evaluating developing worlds. You began this mission with the assumption that a single-planet species must be primitive. What changed your perspective? Jake paused, considering the gravity of his response. It was the crux of everything, his own transformation from arrogance to humility. I realized, he said after a long moment, that we've been defining advancement by our own limitations. Most Va'arn Dominion species evolved in relatively uniform planetary environments. When we outgrew our homeworlds, we needed to expand outward to find more of the same. He gestured toward the holographic image of Earth rotating slowly. But Terrans evolved on a planet of extraordinary diversity. They didn't need to find more worlds. They needed to adapt to the incredible variety their one world offered. And in doing so, they developed something perhaps more valuable than our vast colonial networks. They developed the ability to thrive amid diversity, to adapt rather than terraform, to change themselves rather than transform their environment. Admiral Pex Corin, head of the Va'arn Dominion expansion fleet, leaned forward, his voice skeptical. Are you suggesting that we've been going about this all wrong for 30 millennia, Captain? Jake smiled slightly, not arrogantly, but with a trace of understanding. Not wrong, Admiral, just following one path when others exist. The Va'arn Dominion has done remarkable things through our expansion strategy. But perhaps we've been too quick to dismiss single-planet species as underdeveloped when they might simply be developing differently. Back on the boundless horizon, orbiting at a discrete distance from Earth, Ensign Ethan Ramirez monitored the transmission from the Grand Council session. He turned to the skeleton crew left aboard during the captain's absence. They're actually considering it, he said, his voice filled with wonder. They're debating reclassifying Earth based on the captain's recommendation. They should, said Chief Engineer Serafina Hartz, her tentacles busy calibrating a sensor array. You weren't with us down in their Mariana Trench. The pressure down there would crush most Va'arn Dominion vessels. Total darkness, and yet teeming with life forms. On the same planet with burning deserts and frozen tundra. It's humbling. Ethan Ramirez's antenna drooped slightly. Remember how we laughed at them when the mission started? Called them cosmic homebodies? We all did, Serafina Hartz admitted. It's easy to mistake expansion for advancement, to confuse quantity with quality. Back in the council chamber, the debate had continued for hours. Finally, Supreme Counselor Zoran Till called for a vote on Earth's reclassification from a pre-expansion developing world to a Category 7 advanced civilization based on their extraordinary adaptive capabilities and developmental achievements within a single planetary system. How does the Council rule? Zoran Till asked. One by one, the counselors registered their decisions. When the final vote was tallied, even Captain Jake Harrison looked taken aback. The motion carries, announced Zoran Till. Earth is hereby recognized as a Category 7 civilization. Furthermore, the Council authorizes the creation of a special task force to reevaluate our classification system in light of these discoveries. He turned to Captain Jake Harrison. You and your crew will form the core of this task force. Your experiences and insights will be invaluable as we reconsider our understanding of developmental pathways. Jake bowed deeply. We are honored, Supreme Counselor. There is one final matter, Zoran Till said. First Contact Protocol. Given Earth's new classification, they are entitled to a formal introduction to the Varn Dominion. What is your recommendation, Captain? Jake Harrison exchanged glances with his officers before responding. With respect, Counselor, I recommend patience. Terrans are advancing rapidly, but on their own timeline. I believe they will achieve faster-than-light travel within a century. Let them reach out when they're ready, rather than disrupting their unique developmental path. Zoran Till's crystalline form pulsed with light patterns indicating agreement. A wise assessment. The recommendation is accepted. Earth will remain under observation but undisturbed until they achieve interstellar capacity, or for 200 standard cycles, whichever comes first. 3 weeks later, the Boundless Horizon prepared to depart Earth's solar system. Captain Jake Harrison stood at the main viewport, gazing at the blue-green world that had so thoroughly transformed his understanding of civilization and progress. Final preparations complete, sir, reported Lieutenant Olivia Brooks. Ready to engage quantum drive on your command. Jake nodded, his eyes still fixed on Earth. You know, Olivia, I've been exploring the galaxy for nearly 7 decades, he said thoughtfully. I've seen worlds with rings so vast they eclipse their suns, binary systems where planets dance between stars, gas giants with floating cities. And yet, Olivia prompted when he didn't continue. And yet nothing has humbled me like this single ordinary-looking planet, he said, shaking his head with a rueful smile. We came here thinking we were the advanced ones, he added quietly, his voice tinged with a new understanding. But what we found here isn't a primitive world at all. It's a species that has learned to thrive in ways we never even considered. Once we were looking down on the so-called primitive single-worlders, Captain Jake Harrison mused. All along, they were the ones showing us what true adaptation looks like. A humbling lesson in perspective, sir. Indeed, Lieutenant Olivia Brooks responded, her voice thoughtful. Jake finally tore his gaze away from the viewport. And perhaps the most ironic part of it all, he said, a smile tugging at his lips, is that while we were calling them homebodies, they were creating a home more diverse than our entire interstellar civilization combined. He settled back into his command chair, still amused by the irony. Engage quantum drive, Lieutenant. Let's carry our newfound humility across the galaxy. As the boundless horizon surged into the quantum stream, Earth continued its tranquil rotation in the vastness of space, blissfully unaware that it had just been recognized as one of the most remarkable worlds in the galaxy. Not despite being a single planet, but because of everything that single planet contained.